to another live demo, and today I'm joined by Stephen Tillman. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, how's it going, Confidence?
I'm good. Most people call you Stephen or just Steve.
That's right. Yep, that's good.
Steve also works fine too, right?
And Steve works good.
All right,
Oh yeah.
that's cool. Thank you for joining us today. To everyone joining us in the audience, Steven is a developer support specialist from Brex, and he is based in Florida. What is the weather like in Florida today?
Man, it's a little chilly. It's because it was raining past couple days, but it's comfortable weather.
Okay, okay, that's
hmm
that's cool. It's quite hot right here, so it's nice having someone joining in from a different weather zone as well as the time zone.
hmm
All right, nice having you on the show today. So, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about Brex and why Brex is awesome?
Yes, that's a very good question. So, me a little bit about me. I was doing some programming and some development for work before I came to Brex. But I really like that Brex is like pretty modern company, and they're trying to adapt and keep up with the way modern companies do business. So they have a lot of features and bells and whistles that will help someone who may be running a modern company. What I mean by that is like selling things online, and basically Brex helps to facilitate the way those kind of companies operate. It's harder to do certain things with a traditional bank. So one of the big key points of Brex is the cash based underwriting. So basically, your credit limit on your card is based on your amount of money in a linked bank account. So the benefit there is you don't have to have a credit score to get credit because they base it off of your bank account balance. So it's a dynamic uh, credit limit, if you will. And outside of that, Brex has an API. So the features are pretty much programmable, and you can write code against them and do things outside of the Brex system by plugging things into it.
That sounds cool. So, in a few words, what are the services that Brex offers to tech companies who use them?
Okay, yeah, that's good. One is like expense management. So a lot of cards given to employees, right? But there's parts of the dashboard that let people manage expenses, or they can basically define spend limits on those cards for employees, and those employees can get notified when an expense is out of policy. They can upload receipts from the mobile app. So those sorts of things. There's expense management as a whole, and then we have new products out for managing budgets and different spend things like that. In short,
Okay, cool. So, credit cards and cash management tools, if I get you.
that's right. Cash management tools and credit cards.
Okay, cool. I was reading up something, and are you aware or did you know Brex actually started as a VR startup before moving into fintech?
That is true. That is very true. The interesting thing is they couldn't really get started in the US. It was very popular in Brazil, but when it comes to the US, they want you to have credit and all that stuff. And that's when they decide to focus on creating a bank that will give you credit without having a credit score. So yeah, that's a very interesting fun fact. I'm surprised you know.
That's cool. And one other cool thing I saw is that Brex has a lot of native integrations with tools developers would actually use, like Slack integrations, tools or integrations with Zapier, QuickBooks, and so many other integrations. I think it's really nice because it makes it easy for you to extend the capabilities of Brex.
Yes, it's very, very extensible, really flexible, and yeah, I like that about it too.
I personally can't wait for an Appsmith Brex native integration. Maybe that's something we'll work out after today's call.
Yes, that's an idea, that's a thought.
Right, cool. So everyone is here for the demo. Can you walk us through the demo, what we would be building today, and then we can get started?
Sure, yeah. So we talked a little bit about Brex being programmable. So that's what we'll focus on here. Appsmith has a lot of drag drop widgets and functionality that we can build a low code tool with. And we'll basically plug that into our Brex account. And we'll demonstrate a few things. There's a lot you can do, but we'll just go over creating and terminating cards, creating and terminating vendors, and the last thing we'll go over is, sending invites and referrals and being able to see those invites and referrals in the AppSmith widget.
Cool, cool. So do you mind sharing your screen to get started?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me.
And by the way, if you're just joining us, please say hi in the chat. We would love to know that you are here with us as we do that.
Okay, my screen should be loading.
Yeah, it's up now.
Okay, let's go. You know what? Let me pick another screen.
Okay.
I want to load the actual app. All right, let's try this. Let me know once that loads.
It's up now.
All right, cool. This is the AppSmith app, but before I get started, I just want to quickly give a demonstration of what we're actually building and show you uh, how the end product is going to look like before we jump into creating one of these pages, which will be cards.
Okay,
So
cool.
this is uh, first I'll deploy the application. This is what it'll look like once it's out there. Now these cards that we see right here are just cards from the test system that we have, and they're loaded. Um, I can upload another file. I'll find a file that's basically going to create cards, um, and the cards I'm going to create are going to be named kind of funny, but for testing. Okay. All right. Let's find the file. Wow. Okay. I uploaded this file called cards.csv. I want to log into the dashboard right now so we can see it reflected here as well.
Okay.
Sign in here. Sign in. Sorry, it's taking a little bit. So here's basically the dashboard. I won't go over all the features in here, but one thing that relates to what we're about to do here is the cards and manage cards section.
Okay.
So I have some vendor cards there, and then I have all of my cards. You can see one for confidence right there. But we will create a new cards by uploading this file. So it's three cards created, and If I click over, the last three cards I created, one was called breakfast, and the other two are called lunch and dinner. And then here, if we refresh, okay, yeah, now we see
Yeah, I
the
can see
lunch,
that.
breakfast, and dinner
Yeah,
cards.
yeah.
So that's basically how the cards page will work. Um, Next, users. We'll go over this in more detail later. We want to focus on cards here, but basically we can create invites, and we can also for referrals in a similar way that we created the cards just by uploading a file. And that's basically how all the pages work. That's the general idea. Um,
One quick question. What is a vendor?
Now, a vendor. So if you have a bank account and you want to pay someone, well, you need payment information. And if you want to take advantage of other features, then that idea of a vendor needs to be defined in the Brex system. So basically, it's information. You can define a vendor like a company name, their address, their business information, um, phone number, but also payment information. So you're able to initiate ACH, wire, or check payments directly from your account.
Okay, okay, okay. Sounds good.
Yep. Yeah. So that's the overview. So let's go back to the to building the app. And um, actually, since this page is already built out and everything, I have another uh, app that I want to use because the cards page isn't implemented on this app, and it'll give us a way to talk about how we built the other page.
Sure, let's do that.
Yep, this is cards page. Okay, so I think we have a good idea of how it worked last time, how to upload the card. But so we'll need a button um, on the page. Well, it's not a button. I keep confusing for a button. It's actually a file
File
picker.
picker.
So you need a
Yeah.
file picker. There's another type of button we'll need that you maybe see on the page, the table, and then there was something I didn't really talk about, which was the cards. There's a way to terminate cards. So we'll add a text box where we can input the IDs, and then a button below that that actually allows us to terminate those IDs. And everything is based on CSV. So to start with the file picker that will receive the CSV file, um, yeah, drag this onto here. And now I'm going to call this FP for file picker uh, cards. And we can leave that like that. After that, there's another button we'll talk about later. It's an icon button. Um, let's color this red, and I will call it button errors. Okay. And then we have the table. So let's put that out there. And we will call this TBL cards.
Cool. I just sent a link to the follow along repo because we share the GitHub repo where you actually have everything laid out. So if you guys are interested in following along as we build, or you'd like to revisit some of these things after the stream, you can go check out that GitHub repo.
Thanks. That's a good point. Um, two more widgets. Two more widgets. One is the text box, and remember this will be so we can enter in some IDs of the cards and then get them to delete. And then one more button.
Are you sure you need a text box or an input widget? Because a text box won't actually allow you enter IDs.
Oh, you're correct. Not text. Let's go back.
Input. Yeah.
Input, input, input,
Yes.
input. There we go. Yeah. So we have these two last things here, and because this is like a delete operation, I'm gonna color this red, and we can change the text to say terminate card. Okay. Um, and this, let's name this to card IDs.
We have a
Okay,
couple of
so
people joining us. So S just joined, and he's
yes.
joining in from Belgium. And we also have Andreas joining in from Argentina. Thank you guys for tuning in today.
Hey, Andreas. Yes, good. Thanks for logging in. Um, okay, yeah. So looks like the file picker and everything is together. The one thing I want to do is let's call this upload. All right, so that's cool. So to get an idea of um, the initial page loading that we saw, remember in the demo I showed, this page was loaded with data. So
Yes.
we'll have to get that situated. But now that we have the page at least situated, we'll come back to this, but let's focus on connecting to the Brex APIs now, and then we can revisit this and see how it all plugs together.
Okay.
Um, so the first thing I guess it makes sense to talk about is authentication. Like we can't connect to an API unless we authenticate to it. Um, Brex has a quick start guide. Um, where's that link? Yeah, if you wanted to, I think this is in the repo also. But this basically tells you how to get a token and everything. I actually already have a token, and I basically want to create a query object inside of Appsmith that will do this, that will call this endpoint. And that endpoint is basically, let's go to it. It's under the team API. Then we have users, get current user. So this is basically the endpoint I want to call, and then get a response that looks like this, just so that we know everything is working inside of Appsmith. So if we close out the widget, go back to the Explorer and everything, we'll be able to create these things called queries. Now these queries, they basically define the parameters that we need for an API call. And we'll create one right now called get current user, just so we understand how it works. But
Okay.
before I do that, I want to mention something, and that is that I have an authenticated data source here. In Appsmith, you can begin to create a data source that connects to one of these systems. And I selected authenticated API to create this data source. In this data source, you can add your token right here, which you would get from the Brex dashboard. And by the way, this is where I got it from in here. I went to settings and developer. And then here's, you can go through a flow to create the token, give it permissions, what level of access it should have. And then once you have that value, you paste it here. And now it's all secure and hidden away inside of this data source. And that
Cool.
makes it really useful to create um, APIs from it, like I'm about to do now.
Cool. So you can basically use it as a base to create authenticated APIs because you already have your token saved into the data source.
That's right. Yep, I can create many different APIs off of this data source. Um, Let me call this one the current user, and all that's good. And then the v2 users slash me is the path we're going for. And let's see what happens here. Okay,
Okay.
so this is me. Don't worry about the first name, last name. This is test data that gets generated when we create staging accounts. Only thing important is that it goes back to my email address. So now we can see that, okay, it works and the data source allows us to create API. Let's create another one called get cards. And this next endpoint that we're about to create, get cards, will allow us to fill this table with data. We'll talk about that a little more. But last time I went here and I clicked new API, but it's also possible to click the plus here, and down here under create query, you can create a new Brex card query.
Yeah, that's another shortcut to create stuff.
Hmm.
And you can
And
also do it using your keyboards too. So Command Option Plus would get you there quicker than clicking on the plus icon.
oh, I didn't know about that shortcut. That's pretty cool. So this one's created, and let's look at the API endpoint over in the Brex docs again, and um, let's say list cards. Mine is called get cards, but this endpoint is called list cards because there's already an endpoint called get card. But list cards, v2 slash cards is the path here. Let's go back, put the path and run it. See what it says. Check your request configuration. Now I'm missing the operation. I need to put get, and let's see if this works again.
So yeah, it does.
Okay, cool. So we have some cards showing. You can see like it's a few of them. Some of them are showing terminated, but it's cool that it's there. Um, One thing I want to mention though is like if I refresh the page right now and it comes back to this query, um, you see that there is no body, and I will have to press run again to get it to populate. And that will not really work well for populating the table because it needs to populate whenever the page refreshes or whenever you visit the cards tab. So Appsmith has this setting you can find for the query called run API
Yeah,
on page
page
load.
load.
And if I click that, now if I leave, you see this one doesn't have, because we haven't set that up, but get cards, since it's configured to run at page load, this will always happen, even if I refresh the page now. So it's always going to put the data there.
Yeah,
Now, since we know that the data is going to load all the time, we can basically connect the response data to this table and it will populate this table. So to do that, let's find the code we need to put in there. Well, actually, one thing that's really quick that we could go over is before that is just to show you that we had get cards dot data, and it's very convenient that they have this window here dot items. If I do that, it does populate the way we need, and I can refresh the page, and the table loads with data. But for this tutorial and this example, I don't need all of the data items. Well, I need the data items. I just don't need all of the fields, like ID, owner, status, last four, all of that stuff. So all we have to do Let's go back in the table, data
and
property,
write some JavaScript, right?
and put, yep. I just copy pasted the map function that I had, and basically that's going to remove everything except the ID of the card and the name of the card. So it's cool that's actually working. Um, okay, cool. The next thing we need to do is actually create a card, right? With the upload, we need to be able to um, create a card. We still won't go back to the UI yet, but because we will need another query. So let's create one called create card. And this is a post operation according to the create card endpoint.
Yes, it is.
And it has the same path as get cards, but a different method, post. So we got a post method going on here. Um, Post to this path. Now here's where things are a little different from the previous queries we created. First, we'll need a body, because we need to know what is the card information we're trying to create in the Brex system. And then there's something we need called item potency key. And
Yeah, I
some
was
of you
just
may
going.
be familiar with that, but
Yeah,
it's basically a code that you need so that the API call doesn't retry and process the same request again. And there are more details around that. It's a pretty common idea you can find online, but it essentially means that we need to generate a random string value and set it under this header called item potency key. Um, and there's over in the Brex docs too, there's a lot of helpful docs, and there's some documentation about this item potency key as well. And this is the header name. So I'll put this header here because remember, we're gonna create the card and we want to make sure that if a retry happens, it doesn't try to create the same card again if there are network problems.
yeah.
So once we have that, I want to show you the item potency key code, and we can go over that a little bit.
I'm just going to copy paste the link to the Brex docs on idempotency, just in case people would like to learn more about it.
Yes, I think that's a really good point because this can get kind of tricky. It's very simple, but sometimes not that easy to understand, or it can seem a little pointless. The reason it's very something I want to talk about here is that underscore. I think it's really cool that Appsmith has underscore built in as well as a few other libraries, but this is one of the ones I'm using to generate this random string. You could do this many other ways too. This is just one way I chose to do it, but there are also some other built-in libraries, and I just thought that that was worth mentioning. But we have the item potency key. Our body will be JSON, but let's talk about the body now. Let's see what it looks like in the Brex documentation. When we go to create a card, oh, that's the response. Oh, yes, here we go. The body here. The body has a lot of stuff that we won't include. So I'll show you what I have for it and we can go through it. So this body needs to go. Actually, let me leave that raw. It's JSON. So let's go over this a little bit. So I left out a lot of things here, right? So when you in real life, when you create a card, you can put in the owner of the card, the user ID. I think we have that there. Yeah, we do have that. And spin controls. These are limits you can put on the card to prevent an employee or the card holder from actually spending more than the company has configured. You can set up spend controls, of course, put the mailing address, and a lot of other things that would increase complexity for this tutorial. So that's why here I'm only going to create the card with the user ID and the card name. The card will be virtual and the limit type is user, but there's some other information around that we won't go over. But you're probably looking at this dot params, and I want to mention that those are parameters. You can pass parameters into create card. Um, and it's basically JSON that will have a user ID field and a card name field. We'll talk about and see how we actually use create card later on,
Yeah.
but we can pass values into it to create a card. So let's leave create card there. The other query we'll need real quick is terminate card. So there's an endpoint for terminating a card, and it also has a body with more details than you can put here. But for this example, all right, we need to make sure we think it's a delete. Nope, it's
It's
a
a
post.
post.
Post. The body we'll have is pretty simple. So there are no parameters in this body. We could add parameters, but I'm just hard coding. This is demo, and there's some other reason codes. You can say like card was stolen, or my card was never activated, or my card was not used, or whatever. There's other codes for the reason, but we can also put parameters in the URL, and that's why I want to mention here. So the ID of the card won't go in the body. The ID of the card is actually in the path. So it'll work the same way. We'll have like parameters, but this will only have a card ID so that this query object knows which card to terminate. And let's call this terminate card. Okay. Now a lot more of that will make sense once we start building out the functionality for this page. So next, what we have to do is write some JavaScript code to basically tie all these things together. We just created all the query objects we need to get cards. We have that situated. And then we just created the create card and terminate card. So those don't plug in directly. We'll need to write some code. In Appsmith, in the past, you used to only be able to write small code snippets similar to how we wrote here in the table data property to bind data to widgets. And that used to be the only option, but there's a way to write multi-line JavaScript code using something called JS objects.
Yes.
So we'll create one of those just so we see how this works. And I'm going to call it, well, first, let's pay attention to the menu here. Well, we're using this menu to create the query. We'll look at this menu to create the JS object where we can write the multi-line JavaScript code. So say new JS object. That's what it looks like. And we'll call this cards object. Cards object. Cards object. Now to demonstrate how this actually works, or we can get like a good idea of what's going on. Uh, let's. Oh, hold on. Okay. Finding that. Right. So back here, we need this to something to happen. So right now we can upload anything and nothing is going to happen. But if we want to see something happen, we'll bind this to, we'll bind this on click handler. Oh, sorry. I keep thinking this is a button. File picker, so it's called on
Yeah, on
files selected,
selected.
right? And we'll be able to go in here and say execute a JS function. See how cards object shows up, and my function one, my function two are there, because we haven't actually made any custom functions. But if I call this one, like, let's do a function, because we can put variables there. But I call this one upload. Then let's just do something simple like show a little alert. So now we'll go back. We still have to remember to change the on click, the on file selected event. And this time we can see that upload is there. So this time something will happen once we upload any file. Upload a file. So it says cards created, even though cards
Yep.
aren't created yet, but we'll go through that. Now, if we think about what's going to happen, there's going to be quite a few things happening line by line. Let's take a look at the actual card we're going to upload. It will look like this. And I think a better view that everyone's more familiar with is like this. I'm not sure. Can everyone see that?
You might need to zoom in a bit.
Let's see.
Command plus.
There we go. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So line by line, when we hit upload, Appsmith, uh, the cards object that we have inside upload, what we want to do is go line by line and say, okay, so the card name is this. I'll have the card ID in the file also. And it's going to hit the API to create a card called equipment repairs, for example. And then it's going to do the same thing for all of these. So there's a lot of challenges involved when we're dealing with bulk operations and asynchronous calls. So I have created a helper, so to speak, that is basically an abstraction over all of these asynchronous operations and promises that are happening. And I can show you what that looks like. But first, let's actually see what the helpers actually look like. Okay, cool. I'm copying this from a URL that you can find in the repo. But basically, this is how I'm going to install or set up the helpers. We'll have to copy paste this to the other objects too, but we won't have to go over that here. So let's just leave upload for a minute and paste in the helpers. This is useful for resetting variables. So sometimes during the loop or after operation happen, or the user goes to upload the next CSV file, we need to clear some variables, right? So that's all that one does.
Reset.
This one here, I think it makes more sense to talk about using it before, because this can get very abstract
Okay.
and very generic. So let's talk about this upload function. Let's remove this since we know that it's connected.
I think you have a trillion semicolon
What's that?
at the end of the loop function. Yeah.
Oh, extra semicolon. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That
See.
that
Cool.
should be fine now.
Yep. Awesome. So yeah. So on the upload, I have a snippet I want to share that will give a good idea of how things are gonna happen. Okay, here it is. All right. So this is calling cars object dot loop, which is basically itself. And now let's talk about a couple things here. So once again, this is an abstraction, and all it does is loop through the files, loop through the lines in the CSV file, and make an API call for each one. The collection, we see it has a red underline. That's because we haven't read the rows from the CSV yet. But we'll go back here and talk about how we create rows and how we get the lines from the CSV file. But once we have all that data, we will tell the loop helper that, hey, this is the collection I want to loop over, these rows. And you're also telling it whenever you visit a line in the CSV file, it will do the column values, you know, that for each row. And we can make some implementation allows us to do on every row. If there's an error that occurs on read line, then it will call this function, and it will also tell us the row and the index, right? And this is thing we can do after everything is complete and the loop has ended.
Okay.
So that's the idea. Now let's go back to see actually how we read this CSV file and get card data from it, right? Get the data from the CSV file. I'm gonna paste in some code and then we can talk about it. Um, cool. So we actually already did this part. We bound this upload to the on file selected event, so that's good. The next thing is very simple to read a file. So FP cards is referring once again to this file upload input. Okay, so the first file it has that has been uploaded, it's going to get the data property. Now there's something I want to mention here, and that is that this will only work, like right now it wouldn't work because the data format is base
Base
64.
64. Yeah.
So we have to set it to text so
Text.
it knows that we're uploading like a text file, you know.
Yeah.
So
And I can see you already have two files selected. So you might need to reload and reselect those files so that they are converted to the right data type.
all right, it should be empty. Let's see. All right, cool. It's empty again. Yeah, so FP cards
You don't have any files selected.
and no file selected. Yeah, yeah, that's right. No file selected yet. But yeah. That's where I left off. I was trying to remember. Sorry. Yeah, so I was just double checking that we have the data format set to text. And let's go back. Now, what's happening here is once it gets the data, let's go back to here again. And it makes sense to have this on the side as we talk about it. Um, but what it's doing on split is just taking these line breaks and combining everything into one line so that it becomes an array that we can use inside of JavaScript. So that's what that is doing. Then slice one, and close that. Yeah, slice one. Basically, what that does is tells the array that got created to start at this line and read to the end, and
The first line.
ignore the first line. If it was slice zero, it would just get every
Everything.
line. Yeah. So now at this point, after slice one, we have an array. Imagine an array that has each line item is a string value in the array. So want to fire any rows that are empty. That's basically what that does. And after that line completes, we have rows. We have all of these rows, but they're in such a way that we can do array operations on them. So we have the rows,
So you just converted the CSV file to arrays.
arrays. That's right. Just
Cool.
converted it to arrays. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
And
that reminds me, we actually have a snippet to also help, especially with people who are not too familiar with JavaScript. So if you click on the search bar to the top and search for CSV, yes, yeah,
CSV.
snippets. Now I think you need to go back and use snippets. So
Oh,
use
okay, okay.
yes, so you can CSV. Oh, that's because we have,
There
yeah,
we go.
that's, yeah. So
Ah,
just in
yes,
case you might need to do something on a different app, this is one cool place to see a snippet.
yes, that's very good. That's very good because this is very useful for a lot of other things. Yes, and I'm hiding a lot of this logic in the helper, but yes, this is clearly what's happening for the most part, and we can touch on this more in the end. Good. Um, yeah, so we read the CSV file. We got the CSV file now. Before we forget, remember that this person is doing a brand new upload. So I want to call cards object.reset in order to clear any of these variables that might be left around from the previous upload. All right. So after we have that, here's where we get back to talking about the query objects. So I'm gonna paste this. So have create card dot run card name and the user ID that will actually be passed to us from on read line. So that's where those will come from. We return the promise from dot run because the loop utility does some things with it that aren't very important to understanding how we read the CSV lines, but we can go into the implementation of loop later on, or you can see it on the GitHub repo. Now, is possibility that that might fail. So when there's an error, I will form a message. That's what I'm doing here. So on error would tell us which row will give us the actual data, the actual lines, like we were talking about here, how we created these into an array. It'll give us, it will tell us, hey, Anna, the line Anna failed. So we would have, the card name Anna if Anna happened to fail. But then it also gives us the index of the array so we can do some other things like here. We don't need it, but I'm going to see what row, and I'm trying to make the number very user friendly to so that they will be able to say, oh, it went back here and 1, 2, 3, oh, Anna failed. That's what's going on here. But it's not very essential. So I'll remove it and we'll just have the error message say that failed to create the card. And then we would show an alert just like we did when we created cards earlier. Um, and then once again, we also have to return this message to the loop function. This is um, because it's doing some extra processing behind the scenes that we can get into later.
Yeah,
And then at
it's
the
a really big
very,
function.
it is a big yeah, it is a big function. Oh, you see it, don't you? And then we have on end. What we'll do is we'll count all the successful rows. That's another thing that the loop utility does. It keeps track of how many rows failed, how many rows succeeded, and it uses the Appsmith store to report this information. And so success count, just like how many of the cards got created, will let everyone know. And then lastly, for this implementation, we will call cards.run. Because we haven't refreshed the page and we haven't left the page. So if we upload, um, table won't trigger unless we call create cards.run. And that will basically allow us to see the new cards in this table. Now we may have to go through a few pages, but oh yeah, we created breakfast, lunch, dinner last time. So let's see if I'm going to create another CSV file with a couple rows to see if we can create some more cards, and then we'll talk about terminating the cards, which will be very simple with the loop helper. So let's get cards. Yes. Um, I'm gonna call these cards morning and and afternoon. All right. So let's see if the implementation we put together in the cards object here, double check it. It should be okay. We read all the rows. We reset the variables if we're doing another upload, and then this loop helper, which we have defined down here, should help us do all of that. So let me find the card again that I want. Yeah, morning and afternoon. So let's try it, see what happens.
Okay, it
Okay,
got
so it's
loaded.
2 cards created. So now we have another, notice we have another page number here. So if we go over,
Oh yes.
now we have the morning afternoon cards.
Yeah.
The last thing we want to do, which would be very simple, is these cards, we can easily terminate them. And the implementation for that is gonna also use the loop helper. And I'll just paste the whole thing in. And it looks very identical to the other upload function that we have here. But I will put it in here and then we can just go through it quickly. Okay, terminate. Terminate. We'll bind this to cards object to button terminate cards on clicking it. Yes. Here is the button. We didn't name it, but terminate cards. So I have that, and then now this is where we do the on click handler, and we will find terminate, right? And if we go back, let's go through terminate really quick. So once again, we'll reset because you might have errors left over or some variables left over from the upload, and now you're trying to terminate a card. So we need to reset any variables, get the rows. This is different, but it's a lot simpler. Basically, if you put like any items in here, any IDs, and it's going to split them the similar way we did earlier. And now we have rows. And now we just pass those rows into the loop helper. And then on every line, we're going to actually need to, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Yeah, we have rows. Terminate card is what we need to do. It's called terminate card. And all of it will be in the text box. Each item will just be card IDs. So on every time we read one of those card IDs, we're going to get the value, pass it to terminate card run. Make sure to return the promise. Now, if any rows fail, which we'll be able to see very soon here, I'm going to simplify this mesh so that we can see it. Yep, and then we'll show the error message. And then last, we see how many cards were terminated, and then we show an alert for that. So let's go back. These aren't valid card IDs, obviously. So if this is connected to the right method, it should fail, and we should get error. Yeah, failed to
Oh yeah.
terminate card ASDF. I think an important thing to note there is that, see, we have cards terminated, but we have success as the type of message, but we need to say error, error, and then we can see how it will display differently. So yeah, terminate cards. And I don't see the icon, but let's deploy this so we have a better view. See what happens. Okay.
Did
I was
we,
expecting a icon there, but
yeah, did we edit the right function? Because upload and terminate looks so similar.
oh, let's see. Upload.
You could also
Oh,
collapse uploads just to make it easy to view. Yeah.
oh, okay. I reset. Card.
Oh yeah, yeah, we did.
Cards terminated. Hmm. Okay.
Not
Maybe
sure
that
why.
could be a. It's a visual thing, not with the code. But I was kind of expecting that to have an icon there. But either way, it works, right? So we can see that it like what happens when something fails. Even even if we upload like an invalid card at this point, let's say this one, it would tell us that one has the X. Yes, but Space Mountain, she failed to create card Space Mountain. So, and then of course here, failed to create card SDF. But let's actually terminate a real card now. This one looks no good, so let's take this card ID, and then let's see if we can find another one. Maybe breakfast, and and let's make one fail in between. We'll have one that fails in between.
Okay.
So breakfast should be gone, and this HJFTF should be gone once we terminate the cards. So it says two cards terminated, and then it's of course it failed to create that other one because that's not a valid card.
Oh, I think we actually changed the message type for the success call and not the on error. On end,
Oh,
yeah, so that should be success.
the terminate.
Yeah, yeah, so that should be success. Yes. And I think you already have so if you scroll up a bit, you have an on error function.
Oh, you mean the
Yeah,
implementation or the
yeah.
using it?
No, the on error on terminate.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yes, yes. On error
Then
on terminate.
on line 52, that's where we should have the,
Oh,
yeah.
that's right. That's right.
So,
Right. Okay, cool. So that's why we weren't seeing that.
yeah.
That's a good eye. Good eye. So now it should turn. It should give us the icon at least. Or I might have to deploy. All right. Cool. Yeah. It
Yeah.
has the. Cool. Yeah. I'm glad you could figure that out. Um, so we saw creating the card, went over terminating the card and seeing how the errors show if you upload a bad file. The last thing I want to talk about is that all of those error messages that were happening, they show up here in the side, but we want a way to show this in a modal and have the cards actually the card errors or any error messages want to display in a table. So we don't have any more space here. So I want to create a modal. That's what this button errors is for. The idea is I would click it, a modal would display, and that modal will contain a table. Inside that table, I'm going to have shown the error message that happened. So
Yeah,
this
and
is
I think
hmm?
it's a good idea because it makes it possible to go back to revisit what cards failed so that you can go correct it in the CSV file.
That's right. Yep, you can easily locate it. So to do that, we'll first need to create another widget. Let's create a modal, and we'll just drag that out here, and then we'll call this errors in the errors, and then I will call this error modal, and then Oh yeah, I have that. I think I have that somewhere. Let's just call it. See if we add a S errors modal, and then inside this modal, let's find another widget, which would be a table. Still be a table, right? And let's just make it look a little better. And then the collection that we need to display in here. This is managed by the loop helper also, but it's part of the store, so we can't start with errors. So we have to say Appsmith dot store dot errors array is right here. So that's where those error messages were being stored in inside the loop helper in the implementation. It's actually tracking all of these errors in the Appsmith store. And since they're already stored, we can just use a reference to that array to display it in this table. So close, and that's basically how it will work. We will have any errors. We'll have to click here. Oh yes, yes. The last part to actually display to actually open that modal is pretty simple. We can open a modal, and then we can find the errors modal that we just created. So here we go again. And now you see it displays if we want to see what kinds of errors happen.
Yeah.
Um, and once again, we can select another card, a bad card, because I know we just saw the terminating card errors. I created more cards. I needed a different. Yeah, I didn't need that one. Okay, cool. Just want to put another, okay, invalid one. See if that does it. Maybe I need to redeploy. I'm trying to get the error to happen again, but it'll happen. Let's see. Just so we can see some other errors. Okay, failed to create card space mountain. And then if we click on this, now yeah, we see how it cleared out all other errors, and then it put failed to create card space mountain. It also clears again thanks to the reset function. If we, fail terminate card, now we can see the new error
Yeah.
based on the new section, right? And then
Yes.
what's that? So that's basically how put together the cards page, and the vendors page is very identical, and the users page is a little slightly different, but that's the gist of the creating AppSmith page that will connect to an API, in our case, the Brex API, to where we could easily do bulk operations and maybe take advantage of some things that maybe aren't features yet in the Brex dashboard. So, yeah, you have any questions or wanted to go over anything, confidence?
Okay, thank you so much for demoing building this application. I think it was really straightforward. The way you put everything together was actually quite nice. So, guys, if you have any questions, please do let us know in the comments, and we would love to take your question. So, while we wait for questions, um, I noticed you're using the same loop function in the vendors and users page.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I was just thinking it kind of functioned like the loop function, which is an abstraction, would really make sense to be at a page level so that you don't have to copy paste it in every page, right?
Yes, yes,
Because you use that same function across all of the pages that we have here on the application.
that's right.
All right,
Yep.
cool, cool. So we're actually working on a feature that lets you create page level functions, and then you can pass parameters to it as you did with the loop function.
Mm. Now, do we have any current issues for that? That
Um,
maybe we
I,
can keep track of?
I might need to search for it. So let me
Okay.
just see if I can pull it out. Okay, I think this is something I'll need to share with you later on so that I'll be able to keep an eye on the chat.
Okay, yep, yep. But you are right. So you're saying with the new work you guys are doing, I would be able to define this loop helper in one spot. Okay,
Yes.
yes. Because essentially that is true. That is what's happening. Even in users, it's happening twice. Basically, if the uploaded file is a referral, I'm calling create referral. If it's not a referral, then that means an invite. But they all look very similar. Basically going to loop on error on in, and then the create referrals does the same thing. But yeah, it would be very cool if you could do that in one spot and erase a lot of code. I look forward to seeing that feature out there too.
Yeah, me too. So one question that was asked earlier, I'm just going to highlight it from S. Um, is Brex an API for a bank?
Yes. So we don't have like everything you can dashboard. It's not possible to do everything from the API because teams have roadmaps and certain features they want to implement before others. But that's the goal. That's the idea, right? To have um, extensible ways or to enable someone to write applications that can extend the brick system, and you can create all types of workflows between other applications. But yeah, it is a bank, modern bank, programmable, has API. I wonder, does that answer your question?
Let's see. So I'm just leaving a link to the Brex Postman API docs. You guys have a really, really good Postman doc, so that should clear any questions that might come up. Because on the docs,
Yes,
you can actually run all of the API calls from the development docs right there on Postman.
that's right. Yep. Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm glad you have the link.
Uh,
Um,
one other question, say I was going to build an application like this. Does Brex provide me with a staging API where I can test what I'm working on so that I don't use production APIs and actually break stuff?
hmm. Yes, I see what you mean. We are working on, releasing like actual sandboxes that are really isolated, as a real environment that's spun up. We haven't gotten there yet, but right now, we have a staging environment that if you contact support, or you in our Slack channel, I got to get a link to that, but you can request, access to staging account so that you don't have to hit the production API. But the reason they don't release staging accounts to all customers is because the staging environment is pretty unreliable. It can be flaky because it's also the spot where other Brex developers, deploy test code and make changes and validate things. So when things do break in the staging environment, sometimes it's down for a while or it's out of our control. So we're trying to work towards real sandboxes as opposed to just inviting people to use our staging environment that internally they also use to test.
Okay, okay. That will be very useful because it's good to make this test on a non-production environment.
Yes, I definitely agree. Yep.
One other question: since we're here on the users page, what's the difference between a user, an invitee, and a referral? I think you have a user. You have a user and an invitee. So what's the difference?
Mhm. Yeah, so the invite, right? If we can do a little example here, but invites are basically they will receive an email and it's asking them to join the account holder's account as an employee. So if I have a Bricks account, I can invite someone else as an employee. That way I can take advantage of like, expense management things in the dashboard. But That's inviting someone to join my Brex account that's already set up if I send them an invite. And the second thing about invites is that there are many different role types, but with this endpoint that creates invites, it will invite everyone as an employee. But when we talk about referrals, like referrals, these are when you want someone to sign up for their own Brex account. So
Okay.
they would click their
Okay.
link and it would still have lots of things to fill out. I can show you an example of what that looks like here.
Okay.
But yeah, if we created a bunch of referrals, so this guy, Jane Sparrow, we will generate this link. Now, Jane Sparrow, she doesn't receive an email like with invites, but we can send her this link, right? I probably want to back out there. And you see that she'll receive this link and it pre-populates with
Oh
information that
yeah.
we included in the API call. So this is what their experience will look like. Oh, I'm going to create my own Rex account. Whereas invite, it doesn't have a link, it doesn't have a referral ID or anything, and these people are just going to be invited to an existing account as an employee.
Okay, that makes sense. So it does not seem like we'd have any more questions right now. Um, if there are no questions, I think we can call it a day today.
Yes, I think it was a good talk, a good time.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Steven, and really good demo you put out today.
Okay, thanks. I enjoyed coming too. Had a lot of fun, and it was really good talking to everyone.
Yes. All right. So that would be all for today. I see everyone next time.
All right,
Okay.
take
Bye
care.
bye.